Super Bowl 50, everybody. It's finally almost here, and I'm talking today with Ted Savransky, professional sports bettor out in Vegas. Ted, I haven't talked to you in about a week. It's nice to talk to you again. I've been interested to get your input, your insight, and where you think an edge might be in the big one. Right now, Carolina favored by -5.5, and the total sitting at 45. Break it down for me, my friend, and what do you think, and who do you think, I should say, might have the edge here?
And I love the fact that you started this intro with Super Bowl is almost here, finally almost here, which is, it feels like forever, this 2 weeks between the championship games and the big game. But as a handicapper, I appreciate that extra time. It really gives you time to read everything that you can read, to think through everything that you can think through. And at the end of all of it, I feel like today, I'm not going to get any more knowledgeable about these two teams than I am in terms of what's going on information wise for the Super Bowl. And with all the hype, Super Bowl 50, all of that, you know what I'm doing on this game? A big, fat freaking pass. There is no way I can recommend a wager on the side for either Carolina or Denver at the current number. Now, I did another video where I said, hey, when this line hits 7, you got to take Denver. That line's not going to hit 7. I was wrong. I wasn't convinced it was, but I thought there was a possibility. We've seen a big buyback over the course of the last 24 hours where the wise guy said 6 is high enough. And now, as you mentioned, it's gone back down to 5.5. And 5.5, look, it's a coin flip. It really is. And you're not going to make money laying -110 on coin flips. As a professional bettor, you take advantage of opportunities whenever you see one, but it's equally important to be able to say, you know what? There's no edge here, not on the side. And we can break it down. I can explain exactly why I don't like Carolina and exactly why I don't like Denver.
And that's probably why for the last week and a half, you've probably been beating your head against the wall, because I have also, trying to see if there's anything I didn't see or whatever. I like that angle, Ted, because that might be a smart angle. And at the bottom line, at the end of the day, I'm about making money. The fan side of me, yeah, I hope this team wins and this and that, but I want to find that angle to beat the book. So maybe just laying off that side, because what you brought to the light makes nothing but good sense. I like that angle. How about the total? What is that number doing for you as far as, is it higher than you think? Is it fair?
Yeah, let me talk about the total in just a minute, but I do want to make a case for betting against Carolina and making a case for betting against Denver.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's break it down. We got nothing but time.
Yeah. Because look, you don't want to be laying points in the Super Bowl. Only one favorite has covered in the last 7 Super Bowls, and it's easy to understand why. When you're talking about laying points against elite teams, you don't make it this far without being elite. And for all the Denver stinks, Denver doesn't stink. They're at a minimum, one of the top 5 teams in the NFL. You don't make money laying points this time of year. Recent history really shows it. Then you look at Denver's defense. And look, when you look at the elite defense in the NFL, top 3 defenses, go back 10 years. How many times did these teams lose by more than a touchdown? About 12% of the time.
Wow.
So if you're taking elite defensive teams like Denver plus points, boy, you're doing well both in the regular season and in the postseason. Then we look at the line value situation. Here's Carolina. A couple weeks ago, and AFC versus NFC's priced near pick'em. As the AFC Championship game finished, the lines were Carolina -2.5 or -3 against Denver. Then all of a sudden, the Panthers rout the Cardinals, and Carson Palmer plays a awful football game. And next thing you know, instead of 2.5 or 3, you're laying 5.5 or 6. That's not value. That's not a positive expectation wager. Can't bet on Carolina at this price. Can't do it. That being said, look, you've watched the Panthers. I've watched the Panthers. You've watched the Broncos. I've watched the Broncos. The eye test is very clear. Peyton Manning is near the tail end of his career. Carolina is the better of these two teams. And Denver's elite defense, hey, they've shown some cracks. The Patriots stunk in the championship game. It wasn't like Denver was great. New England played their worst game of the year. Pittsburgh wasn't very good in the divisional round game. So the case for betting against Denver, they're not as good. They really aren't. The offense isn't poised to come from behind. The defense has cluster injuries in the secondary. These are problematic concerns for the Broncos. Can't do it. +7. I look at Denver, maybe -3. Obviously, we're not going to see that again. I look at Carolina, but in between, flip your coin. And I'm not going to recommend a bet on a coin flip.
Ted, there's a lot of your points there that I totally agree with, but there's one thing. I understand that Carolina may be the better team, but also the same way that Denver caught the Patriots perhaps on one of their worst games, even though Brady said it was the best defensive scheme he has yet to see in his career. That's a quote that I heard. Now, also on the other side of that, Carolina played a Bengals team that you couldn't have had much worse a game. Hell, I think Carson Palmer threw an interception to a fucking peanut vendor. Excuse my language. He was so off that day. So with that being said,
Yes.
Don't you think possibly Denver, even though there's some cracks, that defense and the fact, Ted, that they've been on this stage before, that's something Carolina has not been, will that maybe factor into this too? Do you think they might be quietly setting this team up for a huge letdown?
A letdown in the Super Bowl?
I'm talking about Carolina. That would be a letdown for them because I think, if anything, they might be overconfident. If they lose this game, I think every player on that team will be let down. They will think that they failed. That's my opinion.
I don't disagree with that. But look, Peyton Manning's and the Broncos have been on this stage. What happened when they came?
Of course, they got annihilated.
They crashed and burned.
Yeah.
But I mean, has Manning crashed and burned before in big games?
Yes.
Over and over and over again. Go back to when he was a Tennessee Volunteer under Phil Fulmer. Crashed and burned in the SEC champ. Remember, they had a chance to play for a national title.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nah, not with Manning. Let's win one the next year with T. Martin. Then you go through the NFL and all of his playoff failures early in his career. And then he won the one Super Bowl. How did he win that Super Bowl? He got to play against Rex Grossman, who threw a pick six in the fourth quarter when Chicago was rallying to win the game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Since that time, what has he done?
Yep. Valid
Manning,
points there,
big
Ted.
game after big game. Failure, failure, failure. Then you look at Cam Newton in big games. Gee, he won a JUCO national title. Then he went to Auburn. The last 3 games, as Auburn had the pressure ratcheted up for a college kid. Ratcheted up for this guy. He didn't have any big-time college experience at that point. Boom, he's got to play Alabama. He's got to play South Carolina in the SEC championship game. He's got to play Oregon in the national title game. Cam Newton in those games, 9 touchdowns, 1 interception. And, of course, Auburn won all 3 of those contests. Here we have him in the postseason. What's he done this year? Big games. Stepped up. I mean, Cam Newton's played great. Absolutely great. So you say Denver's been there before and Carolina hasn't. Denver's team leader has not played at his best in big games, and Carolina's team leader has. And I trust that more than the Broncos have been there before.
Absolutely, and I totally respect that. Very, very valid points. And yeah, Cam Newton hasn't shown hardly any cracks, and I agree with that. But there's one fact, because it's very true. Peyton Manning on the big stage has failed. But this year, his job, his assignment, his role is totally different. So we really can't gauge that, Ted. This is my opinion. He's going to be stepping into a situation now where they're not dependent on his arm. They're not dependent on the deep ball. They want him to do what he's done the last couple games. Manage that offense. Don't hurt that offense. That's where I think the unseen edge might be. Again, it's just my call. That's why we all got belly buttons. They're like opinions. But the thing is, at the end of the day, I think that defense might find a scheme, because Wade Phillips now has 2 weeks to plan for this, find a scheme just to slow that guy down just a little bit, because there's no wide receiver on that team I don't think that scares anybody in the NFL. Ted Ginn certainly doesn't scare, I don't think, anybody in the NFL. But obviously, their main weapon is what that quarterback can do and how he can do it, and nobody can take away. It's MVP. I just think there's something there that might be overconfidence, might be, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it, but I'm sensing a Denver outright win, and that's where I'm leaning. And again, this isn't as important as how we're breaking down, there's, on the sides and the totals, but I like those factors because Denver's been awful quiet, Ted, very quiet. You don't hear a lot coming out of their camp.
No, but I mean, I don't think you can... Carolina's offense has been undervalued all year, and it's still undervalued today. Do you know how many times this team scored 27 plus in their last 16 games? 15 times. They scored 31 plus in 6 of their last 7, 7 of the last 8. I mean, Carolina is hanging points on everybody, which gets to the total here. And I do lean towards the over in this ballgame, especially now that it's the total's not nick down a notch or two. We're looking at 44s, 44 and a halves today. And
Hmm.
at that number, that's a strike price for me on the over, based on how good this Panthers offense has been and based on the injuries for both of these teams in the secondary. Now, there have been 5 Super Bowls totaled at 46 or less in the 21st century. Let's call it the modern era. Those 5 Super Bowls, 5-0 to the over. The last 7 years, I'm going back for the short term. The
Hmm.
last 7 Super Bowls, only one of the 7 has produced 48 points, or less than 48 points, and we've got beautiful weather expected in San Francisco on Sunday. I wasn't comfortable making a play on the total until I saw that weather forecast. It is supposed to be dry all week. It is supposed to be sunny and warm. These are Peyton Manning conditions, which may help make the case for Denver in your mind, but it certainly helps make the case for the over in my mind.
I like that. I like that breakdown. Do you think that total might nudge back up towards 45 as we get closer to kickoff, Ted? And is there any chance you think it might even go up to like 45 and a half?
It could. I would. If you like the over, I'd bet it sooner, not later.
Okay.
The public tends to get involved on game day itself. Uh, you know, 80 to 90% of the action, depending on the book, comes in the last 24 hours before the game. And I don't see a ton of under betters necessarily. But I'm not seeing this as a mass urgency situation where this total is likely to skyrocket or anything
Hmm.
even close. But I don't think it's going to hurt you, especially if you find a 44 now, to lock in at that number as we speak.
Yeah, yeah. And at the end of the day, for a fan, for me, either one that wins, I won't be disappointed, and either one that wins, I won't be surprised. I just think there's some factors on both sides that could, because there's a part of me that thinks that Seattle Super Bowl with Denver, it could turn into something like that. Carolina could rout them, but I don't know. Can't put my finger on it. And again, that's why they play the game. All right, viewers, you heard it out there. Ted is leaning on that total, okay? Taking that over in what could be a shootout and a Carolina Panthers Super Bowl victory. But who knows? Ted, thanks so much. It was nice to get back with you. I'm looking forward to talking to you again real soon and talking to you about this game after it's all said and done.
My pleasure, Mike. Have yourself a great day, and best of luck to you out there in viewerland. Bet responsibly for the Super Bowl. Don't be an idiot and blow your bankroll on a game that's no better than a coin flip.
That's right. Good advice.